All the activities we carry out need energy. Most of the objects that are part of our daily lives are made thanks to the use of natural resources that we use in an ingenious and functional way. In the subsoil, there is the casket that contains the resources we need, the fundamental materials that support the production activities to walk the path of progress, the principles of sustainability, and the research, where the research is energy. Maura-led Prom Italia Company, in collaboration with the University of Catania and the involvement of local and regional administrations between March 2019 and April 2020, carried out the first phase of a long-term activity of hydrocarbon research and of geophysical importance to study the geological characteristics of the Hybline territory, involving an interdisciplinary team of workers, international experts, and local professionals, with a view to a scientific and economic interest, both public and private. The harbour of this area, Ragusa, boasts a very ancient and prestigious history. The area interested in the geophysical survey is historically known for the richness of natural resources contained in the subsoil, but the whole area also develops above the soil in its splendid ancient buildings, inside of which we can find pictorial testimonies that depict the development of the hydrocarbons extraction activity already about a century ago, such as the palace of the Prefecture of Ragusa.
We are inside the palace of the Prefecture of Ragusa, more precisely in the reception halls. This palace was built in the 1930s, in the midst of the fascist era, and its reception halls are frescoed by Duilio Campbellotti, one of the greatest painters of the time. And Duilio Campbellotti, in his tempera, tried to make people understand what the main activities of this province were, besides, of course, having some parts of the rooms dedicated to the fascist period and therefore to the personalities of the time. In the fireplace room, among those we call reception halls, Duilio Campbellotti thought to reproduce all the activities that were important for the economy of the province of Ragusa. Ragusa in the 30s was a predominantly agricultural city. However, it had something that no one else had, and for this reason it also got the title of province, precisely because it had this economic capacity, namely the asphalt quarries, the bitumen quarries, basically the petroleum. It was at the beginning of the exploitation of oil, and in this fireplace room, Duilio Campbellotti dedicated an entire wall to these activities. To be exact, there is a large fresco in the Chamber of Commerce from the late 1950s and 1960s, in which some phases of oil processing are presented, that is, drilling and extraction. And this makes it clear how important, even then, in 1900, late 1950s, oil was important for the economy of Ragusa.
In southeastern Sicily, along the Hybline Mountains range, there is a plateau characterized by huge expanses, which are nowadays cultivated and divided into a characteristic network of dry stone walls. Millions of years ago, this wonderful landscape did not exist, and its formation has deposited important mineral resources already known in ancient times.
Hybline Mountains constitute the southeastern sector of the Sicilian island, and they are characterized by mild, hilly morphologies and extensive plateaus. The stratigraphic succession of the Hybline is characterized by powerful successions of carbonate rocks that have a rather ancient age, starting from about 250 million years ago. Many levels are classically characterized by bitumen impregnations, including those that we find in some classic mines of which the Hybline area is dotted, including the Strepanosa mine and the Tobuna mine. Specifically, the Tobuna mine is characterized by outcrops of carbonate rocks, which are attributable to the member Leonardo and the member Erminio of the Ragusa formation of the Miocene age.
At the city gates in the Tabuna district, an entire mining basin extends towards the south, developed as early as the second half of the 19th century, to extract the bitumen, which was then transported by sea and used in the construction of the first asphalted roads. This is where our historical journey begins, from the origins of the usage of the mineral resource up to today's geophysical activity, showing the economic and cultural tradition of the Hybline territory.
We are in Tabuna district in the Ragusa suburbs. A century ago, the engineer Spatola, who ran the mine, and an American geologist, Herman Thomas, sensed that a large oil field must have been present beneath this rocky asphaltic stone bank. To see oil flow in the pipes, we had to wait for 1954 with the American companies that drilled the Hyblians.
In these lands, the beauty of which has remained unchanged over the decades, the Greeks were already looking for bituminous rock for the creation of handicrafts. And from the Middle Ages onwards, the most interesting architectural and artistic works are produced. The presence of extractive sites in the Hybline area has not prevented the enhancement of all the other economic and socio-cultural systems, allowing the province of Ragusa to excel in terms of tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing. Natural resources such as energy are enhanced and used in harmony with the rest of the territory, thus giving rise to the so-called Ragusa model.
The Ragusa model has become a model because it is based on the synergistic coexistence of the three economic sectors. I think about agriculture, with the development of greenhouses and intensive production in greenhouses. I think about manufacturing industry, therefore the secondary sector, with also its extractive industry. And I think about tourism, with the birth of important tourist realties, especially in the coast of the province of Ragusa. We therefore have the strength and the certainty that extraction has not blocked the development of tourism, even less blocked the registration of several sites in the province of Ragusa on the World Heritage List. So we see perfectly well that tourism and industry can coexist together.
Morel Prom Italia is a subsidiary of Morel Prom International based in Paris, France. And we are part of a group of exploration and production companies which exist in 10 countries in 3 continents, basically in Africa, in Latin America and Europe, and also in North America.
Much of the world we know is the result of extraordinary inventions that exist thanks to the energy necessary to produce and maintain them.
The issue of energy is a priority for our country, which today, more than ever, since we are in a time of increasing energy needs, has the responsibility to identify strategic measures, which are based on a reality principle, and to create economy and work around this sector. In particular, Sicily, which by virtue of its statute of autonomy has exclusive competence in the energy field, and since 2000 has adopted far more stringent legislation than the national, which also has the aim of enhancing workers and professionals of this region and attract investment from abroad to create jobs around them. Thus, the Morel et Prom Italia project in Sicily takes on a level of public utility, as we will have the opportunity to identify the concrete energy and mining potential of this territory with a view to identifying which areas can be used for development of the project, and which areas instead should be excluded because they have a different vocation. Ever since a couple of years ago, the managers of Morel et Prom Company have come to show me their work and their projects. I have been frankly very happy and impressed by the fact that for the first time, the scientific interests of one or more university institutes, in an evident and immediately finalized way, were welded, because the geologists of the faculty from the geology department also collaborate with us. Here, the university's own and institutional scientific interests were welded with the interests of analysis on the territory by private entrepreneurship. Currently, we are working on the territory and we are obtaining information of an archaeological and geological nature that otherwise we would never have. The possibility of being able to have indications of an archaeological nature without touching the ground, without making an excavation, but rather being able to program them on the basis of real and evident scientific data is certainly something very important for us.
Model from Italia has a program of exploration that is started last year, which is consists of 3D and 2D seismics, and we are going to have this very extensive cooperation with the people local in Sicily, and we are going to do all of those multidiscipline approach to this exploration program, including the archaeology and all the geology related disciplines in the local universities, like in University of Catania and University of Bologna and University of Roma 3.
Geophysical exploration through mapping takes place using slight vibrations emanating from specific trucks on the surface. These vibrations are picked up by special sensors called wireless geophones, which will return an image of the physical and geological characteristics of the present formations.
The geophysical survey activity takes place through simple operating phases. A first phase is the Topographic Survey, which serves to identify the positioning points of the geophones, which is the instrument that you can see in my hands, and serves to capture the elastic waves emanating from the source, from the processes you see behind me. A second phase is precisely that of the vibrations, through the pre-established routes during the permitting by the vibrosis. A subsequent phase is that of the geophones collection that are finally taken to the base camp for data download and the simultaneous recharging of the batteries.
It is an operation that, in addition to allowing the search for gas and other energy resources, is also an activity at the service of scientific progress, a unique opportunity to increase exponentially the knowledge of the subsoil surrounding the Hybline Mountains.
The geological history of a territory has recorded everything in the rocks. The geologist's task is exactly having the ability to read in an outcrop of rock the story that has evolved over time. The geologist's job is to patiently collect all the information that can then be useful for any type of application. In this case, it is very important that the geologist takes particular care in the collection of data if large interpretations are to be made. For example, through the acquisition of subsoil data of the deep geometries of a territory. In the deep geometries of a territory, all the essential elements are hidden. To be able to understand its future evolution, the risks associated with the presence of any structures, but above all, also the resources that this subsoil can contain. Collaboration between universities and industry is essential because they bring to fruition years of research experience on a territory with large data acquisition capabilities in a very short period of time. Beyond the economic benefits that a combination of this kind can generate, we must also consider the very long-term benefits on the scientific knowledge that we will acquire with the help of the data collected in this investigation phase and the subsequent data that will be collected in future research.
One of the exploration strategy within this block is trying to have a collaboration with the previous researcher that already made many concept of geology within this area. And we're trying to make a bridge between the last geological concept in this area, which is already done by the university, with the newest data that we will having from the seismic acquisition, which is integrated with the geological data acquisitions also.
The Department of Biological, Geological and Environmental Sciences of the University of Catania has started a collaboration with Marel et Prom Italia. This is part of the third mission strategy. What is the third mission? It is the transfer of knowledge to society. Universities must take on the role of participating more in technological innovation and scientific and social progress. In this context, the collaboration with Marel et Prom Italia falls within the university's strategies of the University of Catania, transfer knowledge to companies. In this, the student plays a central role because the specificity of the university is that of not only producing research that can be transferred to companies, but creating human capital, and therefore young graduate doctoral students, young researchers, who can play a central role in the transfer of knowledge, scientific, academic knowledge, and which in turn enrich their cultural background through experience in the field, the experience of working in an international corporate team. I arrived at these realities through the world of university because I study geological sciences at the University of Catania, and therefore, through this partnership between universities and this geophysical survey project, some of my colleagues and I have been involved in this work.
Students and recent graduates have worked directly in the field alongside more experienced colleagues, about 200 local technicians including engineers, geologists and agronomists, an interdisciplinary team that works with Geophysical International Marel et Prom experience.
A project that even before data and geological information is made by people. Over 200 workers are involved in this project. A multidisciplinary team made up of engineers, geologists, agronomists, all selected in this area, all Sicilian. A multidisciplinary team that had the opportunity to express a very high level of professionalism. This testifying that this territory once and can still express a competence in the energy sector, as it has been in its history.
For this project, approximately 6,000 landowners have been contacted in order to identify one by one everyone who owns land interesting to the Geophysical Survey. The landowners have offered their availability after being contacted by the team of permit men, which by efficient technologies and purely human resources have identified all those who own land in the area subject to the Geophysical Survey.
SEAT dealt with the permitting phase, that is the authorizations acquiring phase of the consents from the owners involved in the geophysical survey activity. And since this activity develops on the territory, obviously requires the involvement of the population. This was developed through a phase of territorial data acquisition, then acquisition of landowners' data, which, crossed with the project data, allowed us to identify only the subjects interested in the activities. To do this, we made use of IT equipment, in particular the use of territorial information systems, so-called GIS, which made it possible to process the territorial data, and precisely by crossing the territorial data with those of the owners and of the project, we came to the definition of the owners involved, approximately 6,000 of them. An important phase of the permit was the contact with the owners, and through what has been the processing done by our base centre at SEAT, we managed to find all the owners interested in the activities, both for the geophone's positioning and also for the passage of the vehicles, the crossing, the vibrations. So we went to find them directly in their homes, in the places where they worked, which they frequented in order to, let's say, directly explain the project, its importance, the scientific relevance of the project. Thus, a relationship of trust and honesty with the owner was created. In this way, we managed to understand them, to make ourselves comprehended, and to have the project fully understood, and above all, to understand also their need, their fears in relation to the project. Maybe today you realized which is the final impact on the ground, on which terrains are crossed. In fact, it is simply the imprint of the vehicle wheels, and maybe every now and then the imprint of the plate.
The soul of the project is represented by the multidisciplinary team of Sicilian technicians and workers involved, who gave the opportunity to enhance the professionalism of the area and which reflects the culture and the values of Maurel et Prom.
So I think this is very important that Maurel et Prom Italy also recognize that the local communities also have their expertise and local wisdom on how to deal with the resources and also the natural beauties and natural resources of the area as well.
The technicians of the Geophysical Institute of Israel, who work closely with local technicians, are among the protagonists of this operation. Their great international experience gives even more prestige to the Geophysical Survey. The technological vanguard of the means by which a survey of this type is carried out is the flagship of this great multidisciplinary team.
Right here, this is the data center. The data center is a place where everything that you've seen so far, maybe outside, the vibro-size working, the geophone layouts, these sensors that are 5,000 sensors that are around this area, everything is coming here and is being processed to provide an image. Basically, a seismic survey, this is what we're doing here, is some sort of an image of the subsurface. The idea is to create an image of the subsurface to help the oil company decide where it might have potential to drill.
These places, rich in history, contain artifacts not yet discovered under the surface we know, works dating back to the most important dominations known to Western history. Thanks to the Geophysical Survey, it was possible to discover what has not yet been highlighted by previous studies, through a completely innovative approach also for professionals of the discipline.
In this context in particular, together with Maurel, we have started a system of geophysical survey. What are they? These are investigations that are carried out, as I said, before the archaeological excavation to verify without digging, therefore without affecting the territory, what emergencies can be, therefore predicting what is the area to investigate. This without touching the ground or by touching it in a minimal way. This intersection of data really provided an additional element to research and project because, for the first time, it was possible to experiment with new techniques.
To fully understand the importance of the archaeological aspect in this story, we went to one of the most important sites in this area, the Topographic Castle in Likodia, Italia, where a team of archaeologists is carrying out technical investigations to study its original structure.
Likodia Castle, called Santa Pau, is one of the most important monuments in Likodia, Italia, precisely because it tells a very long history. For example, Paolo Orsi, the archaeologist of Rovereto origin, identifies the Acropolis of the Hellenized indigenous centre right on the castle hill. From that moment, the castle, the hill, were continuously inhabited. There is evidence of late ancient times, then Byzantine, the arrival of the Normans, and then the Swabians. And all this is told inside this hill, in which, among other things, the earthquake of 1693 destroyed the castle and therefore sealed this part of history. Our interest arises precisely from the possibility of reconstructing, in some way, the history not only of this ancient centre, but also of this part of Sicily, if not the whole of Sicily.
We are at Likodia Castle, where we are carrying out non-invasive geophysical investigations for the study of soils still not affected by systematic studies. We are applying investigative technologies such as georadar, three-dimensional electric tomography, electromagnetic induction technique, with the aim of creating a mapping of what is still buried underground. This is useful for directing future excavations, studies, but above all, for activating conservation and enhancement projects for the site.
Here we are in Likodia, Italia. We focus on the history of an important settlement in the Hybian territory. I, as an archaeologist, however, collaborate on a project on a much larger scale. The Hyblean territory, in fact, has a very long history. The study of the connective tissue that unites today as yesterday, the settlements of this territory can benefit from the multidisciplinary approach of this great ongoing project. Geophysics, physics, and archaeology work together to discover the elements and traces of hidden landscapes.
Thanks to the work of the archaeologists, the discoveries that will come to light will open up new scenarios for the study and enhancement of the historical heritage. The geophysical survey will allow us to integrate new information to the map of the areas of interest, thus promoting greater protection and more accurate planning of the excavation operations in all the vastness of the area that will be mapped through the survey.
My municipality has a great opportunity to finally be able to understand, to search, to see through archaeological excavations, and with the surveys that the company is carrying out in this context, to finally understand what is there, what has remained buried at a distance of over 300 years in this castle.
Communication with the territory is a very important aspect. Maura et Prom strongly supported a very solid and transparent presence, with the aim of telling and promoting the development of geophysical exploration. Not surprisingly, this aspect has also become an object of interest in regards to the study of business communication, highlighting the importance of an exhaustive interaction between companies and the territory.
Communicating energy is a complex thing because the matter is controversial even for the most perceived public opinion. Here in Sicily, we discovered an entrepreneurial reality that knows how to communicate very well, involving stakeholders, involving universities, the world of science. And this is the most important thing.
Our journey into the ancient modern world of this splendid part of Italy ends here. In the respect for nature, we will continue to work in order to discover the new frontiers of sustainable energy. Maura et Prom Italia, when the research is energy.